I'm the Chief HR Officer of Mercury Systems. We're an electronics company that supports the defense industry. I've been here for 5 years, and in that 5 years, I've seen the company grow from 200 million to 1 billion. We've done 14 acquisitions. We've grown from 600 employees to 2,500 employees, both in the US and Europe. So huge amounts of growth during this time, huge amounts of having to adapt and to integrate many different cultures. So it's been quite a journey over the last 5 years, no more challenging than obviously what we've been through in the last kind of 18 months and continue to go through. Yeah, so I always, when I'm talking to HR leaders and I'm talking to people I mentor, because I love to pay it forward, so I mentor a lot of HR leaders who are looking to be CHROs. One of the things that I tell people is, first of all, don't wait to go have a seat at the table. Go sit at the table and bring value. I always get asked, how do I get a seat at the table? And my answer is, do you think I ever waited? I just went sat at the table and then brought value. And how did I bring value? Well, first of all, I made sure I knew my business. I made sure I understood the business, understood what the business did, understand how the financials of the business run, understood what the customers were looking for. And the reason for that is, if you understand that, you can understand what the people side is. Most CEOs are very financially driven. They're very, kind of customer focused with a people aspect. But if you know that, and then you can tie why the people of the company are so important to both the financials and the success of the company and to the customer, then you're halfway there in terms of the value you bring. So understanding your company so you can talk knowledgeably about the company is really important. And then really being able to connect that dot to, okay, a people strategy of why culture and values is really important, why engagement is really important, why you should be looking at these things weekly, daily, to make sure that your people are taken care of, they're having a good experience, especially in this time, because that's where people are going to stay. And so really, that's part of it. The other part of this, for a solid HR though, and for a CHRO, I heard a quote the other day, and I thought it was really interesting from a fellow CHRO who said, you have to be ready to lose your job as the CHRO. And I was like, okay, interesting. And then I realized what he was saying was, you have to give the CEO feedback. You're one of the only people in the company who really, and actually is required as part of your job description, to give the CEO feedback about what they're doing, what their behavior is, how they're connecting with the company. And that's a very difficult place to be when you're also reporting to a CEO. But if you don't do that, there is nobody else in the company, because everybody reports to the CEO. So the CHRO role has to be that partner in terms of being able to go, hey, I wanted to show you and tell you what's going on, what I'm seeing, and think what you may need to tweak or think about with your team. And if you don't do that as a CHRO, then you're not really living up to the role. You have to do that. You have to be that partner. And if you can do that and gain that respect from a CEO of that role, then you really do, between understanding the business and bringing the people strategy and playing that role, you really do have a seat at the table then in terms of respect of the CEO and others around, what you're capable of. Before the pandemic, we were very on site. We're a very collaborative company. Actually, in our culture statement, every part of our culture statement starts with we. We get results. We are innovative. We help and care each other. We are lifelong learners. We reward and recognize. It all starts with we. And for us, that we was really being together on site and collaborating on our sites. And so we were not a work from home company. And so shifting into the pandemic was a huge shift for us in terms of how we did it. But we really were about, partnering together, fast-paced, decision-making fast-paced, while sat in the same place. in March, as we saw, kind of terror across the US, within 48 hours, we made the decision to send half our company home. So on March 13th, we made the decision to send half our company home. We hadn't identified who it was at that point. In less than 48 hours, we identified everybody who could work from home, because we're manufacturing, which means not everybody could. And on March 16th, we sent them home. And that was the last time many of them have been back in the office. Even now, we've got people who have not been back in our office since March 16th. And so the ability to pivot that fast, first of all, to, when your CEO walks in and goes, it's going to get bad, not brushing him off and going, okay, let's talk about what we're going to do and how we're going to pivot. From there, we really had to think about what was our goal. And our goal was, our top number one priority, and it's still to this day, was protecting the health, safety, and livelihoods of our employees. And so we went through and said, okay, what do we need to do? Health and safety, testing, what happens if you're symptomatic, giving, more sick leave, COVID sick leave, way before a lot of other people were doing that. The livelihood one, though, was about, we have to keep people working because the livelihood depends on us delivering product to our customer. And we had people we knew that their spouses were losing their jobs and they were struggling. So we set up relief funds where they could actually request money on a weekly basis to support them through that time. No questions asked. Up to a certain amount, they could just get it in the paycheck. And so that was huge for our employees when there were times where they sometimes just needed to be able to put food on the table because their spouse had lost their job and they're assembler with us. That was huge for them to be able to get access to funds that would help them. We brought in, recognizing the stress very early, we brought in programs like Headspace. We brought in Fitness at Active because the gyms were closed. We brought in care.com because our parents were struggling. We made sure we had technology. We threw, how many people I think put Teams in during a pandemic? Well, we did because our technology wasn't keeping up with us. And so we pivoted very quickly. But the main thing was, and when talking to Mark, my CEO, was we knew what our goal was. Our number one goal was our team members, and then it was our customer, and then it was delivering to the men and women of the services who, in the end, are our end users of our products. But the number one was our employees and making sure we were protecting them as much as we could. We're trying to figure out future work just like everybody is, and every company has an opinion of what this should be. And in the end, you have to do what's right for your company. And I don't think anybody has the full answer yet of where this is going to land. So, I think that's kind of what we're dealing with. We're a federal contractor, which means we're also dealing with vaccine mandates. The federal government came out with federal contractors with vaccine mandates. So we're working our way, like many companies, through that right now, as well as just like many companies worrying about the great quit or great resignation and what that could mean. And so, everybody, just like everybody else, we're working through those right now in terms of what it looks like. But it's certainly been one of the most complex years I've ever seen in my career. The last 2 years have, from an HR standpoint and a people standpoint, a social standpoint, I think to be two of the most complicated years in our lifetime. Most of us during this last 18 months saw our attrition drop. And so, one of the things when my team's like, oh my gosh, it's gone up. I said, well, hang on, let's think about this. So attrition dropped during the pandemic because you would expect it to. People didn't want to move. That doesn't mean people weren't thinking about it. It didn't mean they suddenly, people who were thinking of looking for another job go, oh, okay, I'm going to love it here and I'm never going to leave. What happened was they held off. And then at a certain period, as jobs started to come back up over the summer, that pent up attrition started to happen. So first of all, we've got pent up attrition, I think, at every company where it wasn't happening. That's kind of now exacerbating it because it's all happening at the same time rather than over the last 18 months. So that's one thing. So there are some where it's just like, okay, it's just, unfortunately, it's going to I do think that how you handle future work is going to be really important in this, and the kind of way you land. I think engagement in terms of with leaders. I think people are really tired. I think people are just very tired from the pandemic. I think they're a little worn out. You know, parents, I'm a parent. I mean, I never want to go through a school year like we went through last year with hybrid, or is it hybrid, or is it remote, or is it, you know, in with masks. I never want to do that again. And so the stress that parents have been put under, and caregivers for elderly, I mean, it's exhausting. It's exhausting. So, you know, what we're doing right now, we're actually in our engagement survey right now, and we're saying action planning out of that. Managers really spending time with their employees to understand what's going on, what they need, where they're at, doing stay interviews, which may sound like, you know, you do exit interviews, but that's lagging. So do stay interviews where you're actually asking people, what is it you like? What is it you don't? What are you thinking about? What worries you? Do it early, because that way you can actually engage with them, and you've got a chance of keeping people and really helping understand what's going on across your organization as a leading indicator rather than lagging, because attrition is a lagging indicator. It's too late. And so we are trying some creative things. We're not perfect. We're always open to new ideas. And one thing I will say, the one thing I am so fortunate. I have a network now that I never had before the pandemic. I've got a network, I'd say, of 200 to 300 CHROs. And never once when I reach out to a CHRO and ask, say, hey, what are you doing? Can we talk through it? Do I get it? No, I'm not sharing. The amount of generosity across companies of sharing, and we've done it. You know, we've shared what we're doing with companies who've been struggling recently with the vaccine mandates. Companies are like, oh my gosh, this is hitting us. I said, we've already done it. We've already rolled it out. Let me talk to you about what we did. The amount of generosity of working together to figure this out, because nobody can do this on their own, really, has been huge. And so if I think of one positive, you know, a lot of positives, but one positive for me, that generosity and that network has been something I will treasure now for the rest of my career.